Hey guys, it's Vince. Today in this video we are going to be discussing setting native units inside of Mach3. Now I know this topic is old, I know there's many videos on YouTube about it, but I've never seen one really done what I feel to be the correct way, showing you a visual demonstration of different codes and also showing you some hidden secrets in Mach3 many of you don't even know exist. That being said, I want to cover it as briefly as possible, but in as much detail as possible. So the first thing I'm going to recommend you guys do, especially my new guys, and I say this in all of my videos with Mach3, grab a pen and paper so you can take notes. Once you get your pen and paper, we're going to begin. So right now, what I'm going to do is just give you a brief overview of what native units really is, because a lot of guys have a lot of confusion about it. Native units is a fancy way of saying the default measuring matrix Mach3 will be using to transpire all the measurements from the G code you will be loading into it to actually represent motion. And what that simply means is that if I load a file in Imperial, in G code, my native units in my Mach3 software must be set to Imperial. If I load a file in the metric measuring matrix, then again Mach3's native units should be set to the metric measuring matrix in order to support it. Now there are some variables to change that, but overall my recommendation is once you get Mach3 fully installed, and again everything is set, your machine is set before you do anything and you're ready to set native units, really think about what your main applications are. What measuring matrix do you prefer? Are you using the majority in Imperial, or are you using in the metric measuring system? If you're a metric guy, you're golden. I particularly like the metric system because I feel it's much more accurate and it's now taking over the world, so to speak. And as far as my Imperial guys, my old schools, it's fine to use what you prefer. The main thing is that your CAM software must be outputting all of its code to match whatever native units you've put in Mach3. And we're going to cover that. So now what we're going to do is to set native units real simple. We come up to config. We're going to go to select native units. You're going to get a dialog box pop up warning you, do not is fully capitalized. Use this to change between metric and English G code. This is for setting the units used for motor tuning. And what that simply means is whatever you set as your native units in Mach3, and by default it's set in Imperial, meaning that all measurements will be done in inches. You can see here on the DROs, being the default is set in Imperial, unless I change it, all of these DROs will be representing inch measurements. Now, of course, the thing that I feel Mach is missing is they should have an mm or an Imperial measurement here just to let you know what measuring format you're in. I know many guys say that. There are some different screen sets that allow that. However, for us using default screen set, we can definitely see that this can be confusing, but again, it's not that bad if you're taking notes, and I hope you guys all are, so you can understand this process. So once again, once we understand this, and I'm going to go into this in more detail because I know it's kind of about as clear as mud, I'm going to click OK here. You can see I get another dialog box, set default units for setup, units for motor setup dialog. And what they're discussing is basically how your motors and your accuracy of your machine is going to be set, because we know if the measuring of the machine based on the G code we're loading is set in either Imperial or metric, we want all of our transmission measurements, meaning our steppers to move an inch or however many millimeters, to be set the same. If they're not, you're going to have problems with calibration, and you're also going to have problems with scaling issues. So by default, I've already stated that Mach3 sets its actual measuring matrix in inches, which is Imperial. I'm going to set it to millimeters intentionally, and I want to show you some things about this. Once I click OK, and I come up here to config, and I want to save the settings. Now you know, again, the DROs, once again, aren't telling us a damn thing as far as which we're in, Imperial or metric. But what many of you guys don't realize is right here where it says G codes and M codes, you have shortcuts. You can click on these at any time if you want to see shortcuts to what Mach actually offers as far as a summary of G codes or M codes. Now, what the codes that we're interested in, if you do have to change from inches to millimeters for a particular file. Now, this does not work on every file because there are different CAM softwares that it will work with and other CAM softwares that it will not. So it's not set in stone. However, it does work. And I'm going to show you how it works with a demo file of the Roadrunner right now. But for those of you just learning this, the G20 and G21 unit selection, program G20 is to use inches for length units. Program G21 is to use millimeters. It's usually a good idea to program either G20 or G21 near the beginning of a program before any motion occurs, and not to use either one anywhere else in the program. It is the responsibility of the user to be sure all numbers are appropriate for use with the current length units. See also G70, G71, which are synonymous, which we're not going to get into. It's irrelevant, but it's interesting that they're letting you know that you're the end user and you're responsible for setting this. So what these codes will do, they will allow you, let's say your buddy makes you a file, and you get the file and he's doing imperial, you're doing metric as far as your native units set in your system. If it's compatible and you go inside the file at the beginning and it's imperial and you're running metric, you want to select the G21 to convert the file's measurements all into millimeters. And I'm going to show you how to do this. Just for instance, we're going to come over here to File. We're going to go Load G-Code. And you can see I'm bringing up all the G-code right now, and I'm going to select our Roadrunner. And you can see right now, actually measuring in G21, I actually changed this. And I did it intentionally because I wanted you guys to see how this looks when it's actually loaded and changed inside of Mach3. You could say I added the G21 code, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to click on Edit G-Code, brings up the file. Now, if I go back, you could see that actual file, before I change anything, that file is scaled perfectly. Everything looks good. You can see my soft limit boundaries. Everything here looks good. The file looks normal. Your movements would look normal, and everything is corresponding. Everything appears to be fine. Well, let's make it not fine so that many of you that encounter problems can see what a problem looks like, which again is what most guys don't understand when they film videos. This is what's imperative for you guys to learn. If I set it deliberately to G20, which is going to convert this file to imperial, meaning when I hit save, anything underneath this, all these allocated movements are all now in inches. It's converted to imperial, even though the native units of the system has not changed. And I'm going to show you that. When I close out of this, now look at what happened. Look at the scale. It's off the chart. So if you guys see this, this is letting you know something is wrong. And the main thing that's wrong is your scalability is off because we're using imperial with the native units that's set in the metric system. So the default measuring system is in metric, and the file you loaded is reading an imperial, and this is a deliberate mistake I did so I could show you guys what you would encounter on some systems. Some programs will do this. Mach's programs will do this, and this is what's really cool to see because, again, it gives you a full visualization of what you would encounter potentially if you see this. Now, if you see this, you will not change your actual default native units. Whatever it's set at on your machine is fine. What you would do is you first try what I said by using the two codes, whether it be G20 if you need to switch to imperial, or G21 if you need to switch the file over to translate into the metric system. So we're going to click OK. I'm not touching any of my native units. Now what I'm going to do is click over here to Edit G-Code. The file's already loaded. You can only do that once the file is loaded. Once that's done, if I go back to G21, because now I'm converting all those measurements once again to all these measurements over here over to the metric system, even though it's imperial, that's the default setting of this file. It's going to convert all these measurements to the metric system. Once I do that, our scalability will be right. And you can see we're right back to normal. Okay, so this is something to look out for. Now, it does not work on every system. And what I mean to say is not necessarily system, but file. Let's look at this in depth, shall we? So what we're going to do is we're going to go with Close File, take it off. Now I'm going to load a file that I did inside of Metric, because this is a common question, and I'm just using Metric as an example. I've got a 3-inch circle here. Okay, you could see the scalability of this file is off. Okay, and why is it off? Because we know we're paying attention, we're writing down notes. We know that this is due to the fact that this file is out of scale because we have our native units set in the metric system, and this file was created imperially. So again, it's reflecting in inches, and that's what's making the file giant. Now, what I just taught you about using the G codes, and again, you can hit this button at any time. You can see anything you click on, whether it be, whatever arbitrary thing you click on, it's going to go to. The cool thing about this is always here for you guys to reference, and you should get in a really good habit of doing it. Again, G20 is for inches, G21 is to convert to millimeters. Now, we know my default file format, again, or I should say my native unit format, is set in the metric system. So if this unit of measure for this file is in imperial, we would try without a guarantee of use. We're going to go to Edit, and we're going to go G21. I'm going to edit that. You can see I put the code in. I'm going to go Save, and I'm going to close it. And you can see it did not work. Okay, and I've seen guys tell me that this file will not work because of that, because now even though we've closed it and we've reopened it and actually used the code file, the changer, so to speak, as far as using G21 to convert all those measurements from imperial to metric to match our native units, you can still see the scalability of the file did not change. Okay, and in this case, this would not work with your file. Now, you can move this. I've had guys move this, and they'll say, well, that's in the beginning of the file. Maybe it's, maybe we're going to come down here. We'll come over here, and we'll go G20, G21, and we'll go File, Save As. See if it works now. I've had guys do this, and you can see nothing has happened. You hit Regen, and you're still in that same big format. So it does not work with every file. However, that being said, it's okay with Vectric, and I'll tell you why. Actually, it's pretty much okay with every piece of CAM software out. This is not room to panic. What you need to realize is that CAM software, Vectric, and all the other brands, Fusion 360, Bobcat, they all have the ability to have their post-processor put the file's measurements in whatever measuring matrix you select. So you'll just simply, before you create your geometry, select the proper output of the measuring matrix you want, whether it be imperial or millimeters, and make sure it matches your native unit selected inside of Mach3, and you're set. Okay? In this instance, though, it's very interesting to see, and like I said, I'm trying to show you visualizations of what's a dead giveaway for this instance. And you can see the scalability here is off. And even though I went to edit the G code and I put it in down there, the G21, I put it all over the place. I put it at the top. I have guys telling me that. And you can see it's not working at the top. It's not working in the middle before the code. It's not working anywhere. So in this instance, we can just hit File. I've removed them all. All the codes are removed, and I'm just turning the file back to what it was. And you can see it's big. Okay? Now, we're going to close this. We've proven our point. If we wanted to actually run this code and run it in a file format that would work properly, what we would do is just have selected inside of Vectric's CAM software that we wanted to output this in millimeters to match the native units in Mach3, and this file would have loaded in proper scale, and everything would have been fine. Okay, so that's the big thing you're looking at there. If we go to Roadrunner, though, okay, we can see Roadrunner's loaded perfectly because this file, as soon as we got G21 up, it's loading once again in perfect scale. Okay, if we go to G20, and this is another thing to look out for. We'll go to G20. I'm deliberately throwing off the file to once again revert back to its standardized imperial measurement by default. And we know my native units once again is set to the metric system. I'm doing it deliberately. I hit Save, come over here, close out, and now you see the scalability of this file is once again crazy. Okay. Another thing you'll notice, if I hit Edit G code and I erase this, completely erase it. Okay. File, Save, close. Okay, we're good. Regen, and again, you can see, because again, I'm trying to cover as many instances that you guys would see these issues pop up so you know what causes it. If you don't have a code here, it's going to cause it. If you do have a code here and it's incorrect, you're also going to get the scaling issue. Now, where else is scaling going to play the biggest role in something that really will hinder you guys? We're going to come back up here to config. And we're going to go to our motor tuning. And the reason I wanted to reflect upon motor tuning is because you can see here under our velocity settings, it reflects inches or millimeters per minute. Now, what that means is your movement is going to be reflected in either inches or millimeters per minute by, once again, what you set your native unit of measure to be in Mach 3. If you've set it imperial, it'll be in inches. If you set it metric, it'll be in the metric system in millimeters. So again, what we have here is a vast disparity between the two. If, again, you're moving 120 inches a minute, that's much, much faster than doing millimeters. Again, 1 millimeter, it takes 25.4 of them to equal 1 inch. So you can see your scaling issue in not only movement, but also in file as far as its size, either being too big or too small, will be affected. And again, it still translates again into movement. So what happens a lot of times is guys will look at this and they'll reflect upon, well, my movement is off. I want to move an inch and it's moving really, really slow. Well, if the machine is moving really, really slow, most likely you have your native unit set at millimeters per minute, which at 120 millimeters per minute is extremely slow. If we go back to inches a minute, now we're starting to pick up speed. So again, native units is huge as far as setting these settings and setting them correctly, especially when it comes to the steps per setting, because again, if we're doing 2,000 steps, again, 2,000 steps based upon what unit of measure is going to dictate the speed of the system. So again, your accuracy of your system and of course the speed of the system is going to come into play. And that's why setting your native units and understanding the measuring matrix you've selected must be done properly. And you really need a thorough understanding of this. And that's why, once again, I hope you're all taking notes. We're going to close that file out. We're going to go to settings. We're going to come over here to axis calibration where it says set steps per unit. Axis calibration is the heart, soul, and brain of your machine. And why I say that is it's the accuracy of your machine. So if we click on set steps per unit and arbitrarily pick axis to calibrate, we'll say X, click on it. You can see it says how far would you like to move the X axis. Well, if I put in 1 and I have my measuring matrix set to millimeters, this machine is thinking I'm going to have my precision measuring instrument, preferably a test dial indicator with a high resolution, it's going to move 1 millimeter because I've already have my native units in Mach 3 set to the metric measuring system. Now, a lot of guys think because they're using Mach 3 and they say 1, it's going to move 1 inch even though they have their native units set to millimeters. If I wanted to move 1 inch, many of you guys already know the answer, you'd have to put in 25.4 and that's going to move 1 inch. So again, in this particular format, because again we have our native units set in the measuring matrix, which again is set at millimeters. So again, that's the thing you have to pay attention to. If you are looking at your system and you're looking at it as carefully as you should be, especially as you're learning, take the notes, go over all of these details as they will bite you. The big thing is I'm trying to bring to light what visualizations you'll see and what that will interpret in terms of you doing corrective action. If you see, once again, the scalability of the files off, you know if you load a giant file and you know something's off there, you know it's most likely going to be your native units or whatever the file format you loaded is not matching your native units right away. Then you can try either using G20 or G21 to rectify it. If it does not work, you know you have to corrective action that. So again, you've got all the information you need. The big thing here is understanding you load something backwards, you're going to either see it go really big or you're going to see it go really small, depending upon what measuring matrix you chose, whether it be imperial or metric and vice versa. So again, guys, I hope that this video has been helpful. I feel it's, let's close this out. Let's close this out. I feel that in retrospect, it's really just a reminder to stay focused on what you guys really need to pay attention to. And overall, you really want to use notes in the beginning. I say this to all of my novice users, even my veterans. Most veterans that are intelligent enough to realize they're not going to memorize everything, use your notes. It's a much faster way to diagnose a problem. And again, when you see the obvious, when you come over again, and I get guys that tell me this, I'll load the G code 6 times and I can't get it, it's just out of scale, everything is off. If you see this, you know something is off, but you have to file that in your mind. You have to put all those files together as far as troubleshooting. You don't know what you're looking at, you know? And really, the information is right here if you just understand it. And again, you can see everything is right in front of you. I've never seen a video that described using the G codes that are actually inside of Mach 3, the summary of them, or the M codes for that matter, because you've got those as well. I mean, you've got all this information right here. It's just understanding how to use them. And remember, G20 and G21 will only work on certain files. It will not work on all systems. So, and when I say all systems, I mean all programs. Certain programs it will work on, certain programs it won't. But the main thing is that you'll be able to identify what the issue is when you have a scaling issue like this. So again, I hope that the video has been helpful. We'll close this out. I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions. The big thing I'm going to say first is this. Before you message me, I do ask one thing. Watch the video again. Make sure that you are taking notes, and make sure that you chronologically go down and watch the video in sequence. And I guarantee you, watching the video and practicing it with your computer open, and you don't have to have it hooked to your robot. You can do this in your living room at your own leisure and just practice. And I promise you, it'll all make sense. So again, guys, if you have questions, if you need a consultation, if you'd like a quote, message me direct at storm2313@gmail.com. You can also message me through my eBay store on eDealers Direct. Now you'll see the contact information at the beginning of the video and also at the end of the video, and I'm doing that now because it's just easier to get. I'm having guys always requesting my contact information. I'm trying to make it much easier. To all my subscribers, I love you guys. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope my guys who are veterans even hopefully learned something. And don't be afraid to play, guys. And when I say that, play with the system, but the main thing is don't think you always need to have your system open with the robot right there to practice. I have a lot of guys that think that, and that's not the case. So again, keep an open mind and keep practicing, and I know you guys will get it. Thank you for your support. Take care.